The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey, good morning. This is Robert Little from the Urban and Community Forest Program for CAL FIRE. I'm accompanied this morning by Jimmy Scheid and also Julia Bartons. Hopefully everyone can hear us and see the screen for the CCI and Prop 68 grant presentation. So if some of you can throw in a little chat, that'd be helpful to just confirm that we can that you're not having any issues. So it looks like I'm not seeing anything, so we will get started. I want to go over some ground rules for our presentation today. What we'd like to see happen for the webinar today, we are going to record it for future use. What we'd like to see happen is if you folks have questions throughout the presentation, please type them in the chat bar, and then we will scroll through them and either answer them today. We'll do a Q&A session afterwards, or we will get them answered and then post them on the web page as soon as possible. So with that, we'd like to just hold any questions through the presentation till the end, and then we'll entertain those. So overview of our program, just the Urban and Community Forest Program in general. We're guided by a legal authority under the Public Resources Code. It's about 4 or 5 pages, really well written, and I would encourage anybody who is wanting to learn more about our program, but also what guides what we're looking for in projects, to review that Public Resources Code. And then just a little bit about our program makeup and activities. We have 7 regional foresters statewide that provide technical assistance and advice, not only to help grantees maybe answer questions while preparing a concept proposal, but also throughout the life of the grant or project. We also engage in public and professional education. Many of our regional foresters belong to professional organizations such as the Institute Society of Arboriculture, and about half are registered professional foresters as well. One thing we also do is we link people with research and technical transfer of information. We promote and engage in public events, Tree City USA. Along with that comes our advocacy, both regionally and local, for improving urban forests across the state of California. And then because we're a statewide program, we interact with a lot of different partners and organizations. And so that enables us to connect people and form some partnerships. Probably the big reason why a lot of you are here today is to learn more about our urban forestry grants that we administer. We have both state and federal grant types. Today's presentation will be just for the state grant programs. There are other agency-related programs. California Natural Resources Agency Urban Greening Program has related activities for urban tree and vegetation planting projects, green infrastructure, stormwater capture, things like that. So I'll give you an overview of today's workshop. We'll go over the different funding sources that will be available this year. We will review the events and processes and requirements that are the same for each funding source. And then we'll do a little deeper dive into each funding source type. starting with the climate investment project types. And then we will transition to the Prop 68 Parks and Water Bond project types. After going through those, we'll provide some assistance and resources on the PowerPoint, and then some information on submission process through concept proposal and project application. And then we'll finish off by going over some general competitive considerations. So here's an overview of what we're looking at for this year for the 18-19 grant cycle. If you, I'll direct your attention to the graphic there in the middle. One of the big take-homes this year is we only have 3.5 million available for grant projects under the climate change investments grant type. And then this year, the bulk of our funding will be out of the Prop 68 Parks and Water Bond. So right at a glance, you can see that the almost 80% of the total will be out of the Proposition 68 Parks and Water Bond funding. So looking at both sides, we're looking at the climate change investment project types. We're going to do urban forest expansion improvement project type and an urban wood and biomass utilization project type. Because of the small amount of funding, we made a strategic decision to drop out the urban forest management plan from that type. Now moving over to Prop 68, at least on the right of my screen, that'll have an urban forest expansion improvement project type. We moved urban forest management plans into this funding source. And then the urban forest education and research project type hasn't been offered in a while. And after looking at the Prop 68 guidelines, we found that there was room, and it was also appropriate to add this grant funding project. For both processes, we're going to use the same competitive application process, a two-stage process. For both project types, all projects will be complete by March 30th of 2022. And then we're going to require the same reporting and GHG requirement. Where to find the guidelines? If you go to our Urban Community Forest Grant webpage, many of you have already been there. You'll see the guidelines for each. And then you see our grant workshop schedule, which I believe most of our workshops are now complete. The guidelines are right there, and you can download each or both. Again, what we wanted to do for grantees or anyone interested in our projects was to really create a timeline that's the same for both funding sources. That helps us administratively. We also believe it helps the end user, any of the interested applicants, that we have the same timing schedule. So November 29th, which is coming up the end of this month, concept proposals will be due. We take these concept proposals and we review and score those by a panel of collaborators that we assemble. It can range from anywhere from 8 to 11 people. And then, so we score those concept proposals. By the second week of January, we expect to send out invites for project application. These notifications and a posting record of all projects submitted will be made. One thing I wanted to say about this is this year we're going to submit an Excel table list of all projects that were submitted to us. It'll be a full list, not just the ones that are awarded. Second week in March, project applications will be due. And we expect by the second week of April that we make a final selection of applications to invite for approved projects. By the first week of June, we're hoping to have fully signed and executed projects that would be ready for operations in the field. Again, there's the March due date. March 30th of 2022 is when projects must be complete for both funding sources, and final project invoicing due. There we go. Okay, application process will be the same for both funding sources. This is a two-stage competitive application process. Concept proposal stage, we use this for scoring to determine which projects will be invited to submit additional information. So again, the due date there. Successful project applicants will be invited to submit a project application. And then for this, this is a deeper drill down in your project about what your project is going to do. So please remember that we will invite back more people for project application than what we'll ultimately be able to fund. So it's still a competitive process at that stage. Once we make the final selection, successful applicants will receive a tracking number and a due date for the required documents along with the project application. So we'll talk about some similarities of general eligibility. The eligible applicants for both the CCI and the Prop 68 will be cities, counties, districts, nonprofit organizations. There's more information on that in the guidelines. General eligibility criteria apply to urban areas, and we'll talk more about that later in the presentation, what that is and what it means. All projects require best management practices supported by a qualified technical advisor. We'll talk more about what constitutes BMPs and a qualified technical advisor. We want to see projects that have multiple benefits. So urban forestry, social forestry. So not only think beyond trees, but the benefits it can have to communities and also educating people. 10% of the budget can be for indirect costs, and then 20% for education and outreach. The Prop 68 urban forest education and research will be a little different, and we'll drill down on that when we get there. Cost share, 25% minimum. It can be more. That can be a hard match or in kind. It can be reduced or waived for disadvantaged or low-income communities demonstrating hardship. We rely on the project applicant to verbalize that need. Grant administration, required forms, project reporting, payment invoicing, accounting, inspection processes will be the same for both grant funding sources. So general guidelines. Regional foresters are available for both funding source project types. The second bullet point is really important because of the amount of funding for each project type. An applying entity We cut it off at a total of 3 grant proposals, regardless of grant type or funding source. We think even with that limit that we're going to receive a fair amount of projects to go through. Now, how a project applicant wants to strategize over submitting projects under either the CCI or Prop 68, that's something that you'll have to consider. Failure to perform with the provisions can be cause for interruption, suspension, or termination of the agreement. We're going to use the same quantification methodology for GHG accounting and benefits. Both project types generally serve disadvantaged communities and previously underserved areas. Each funding source does have specific requirements to this, and we will go over those differences. For both funding sources, advance payments can be approved not exceeding 25% of the grant award, and this is for nonprofits only. And that will hold true for both funding sources. The funding can't be used to fulfill any mitigation requirements or any other requirements imposed by law by a city or a district, and the project will comply with local and county ordinances. A little bit about the similarities for greenhouse gas reduction methodology. This is real important to understand. The CCI grants, the climate change investment grants, require the methodology established by the California Air Resources Board. What Prop 68 asked was that a methodology should be used for the projects, and so we decided to adopt the same methodology. One, because the tools exist, and two is because a lot of our existing grantees and stakeholders in urban forestry activities across California are already familiar with that methodology. So here's a link off of the Air Resources Board webpage. You have to scroll down quite a ways to find the second CAL FIRE quantification method. There's one above it that's for forest health, so be sure you've scrolled down far enough to get to the Urban and Community Forestry Program quantitative methodology. And then our other tool is the iTree planting tool, and this can be found on our webpage. We provided it there. The link for the California Air Resources Board will also be on our webpage. So we put these tools that a project applicant or an interested stakeholder would have to use can be found on our webpage. All right, so that was just an overview of the similarities of both project types. So now we're going to drill into and take a closer look at our project types that will be funded under the California Climate Investments. So here's our project types that we're going to bring forward for California Climate Investments. Remember, there's only 3.5 million available. So we really wanted to focus on the true purpose of the California Climate Investments overall program, which is to store carbon and capture greenhouse gas emissions. And so we took the Urban Forest Expansion Improvement Program. That's really going to be the cornerstone for this funding source. What I'd like for folks to note here is that our grant amounts for the expansion and improvement is $150,000 to $1.5 million. And there's a brief description of what that project type will allow you to do. And then the urban wood biomass utilization, notice the grant amount caps are between 150 and $1 million. So urban forest expansion and improvement, UFI. Eligible practices. This isn't an all-inclusive list, but it's some of the more important ones. Tree establishment and care is allowed. Site preparation, efficient irrigation systems or updating older irrigation systems. A job creation, job training element is important. This project type allows a parcel purchase for urban forest related purposes. Orchards and community gardens can be a minor component of these project types. GHG tracking and quantification and reporting costs are also eligible. And we encourage grantees when you're really considering your budget is to think about those administrative costs. The tracking and reporting, it's somewhat of a complex process and it requires some experience, knowledge, or learning the process to do. So we encourage grantees to really think about what those administrative costs would be. And then this project type allows for 1 to 2 cycles of post-grant maintenance for the trees. Our second project type for the California Climate Investments funding source, urban wood and biomass utilization. Again, complete listings in the grant guidelines. Some of the things we look for is the true purpose of this is to utilize the tree for its highest and best use and to divert what would commonly go to a landfill and just become part of the waste stream. We're looking for those projects that can divert a substantial amount of urban wood into another usable product that provides a benefit. The project must result in the GHG benefit, and by that, creating a wood product for a higher end use, the storage of that wood product is the GHG benefit. Equipment is an eligible cost. Again, GHG tracking reporting costs are eligible. Wood must be sourced from an urban area. We fielded several questions in this last year, and so I thought it was an important point to bring forth. We want projects that basically take wood from an urban area and reuse it. That's our primarily focus of this project type. Tree removals must have a valid management need as determined by a qualified professional. So this is carefully worded to be very clear, is that the tree can't be removed just for the value of the product itself. There must be some other valid management need. And we also want these removals to be determined by an arborist or another similar qualified professional. We're looking for these projects to be self-sustaining beyond the grant period. So we're looking how they're going to continue to operate after the grant period is over. Job training, job creation, especially in AB 1550 communities, are eligible costs, and they're becoming more and more a valued element of this project type. And then this project type can have a tree planting component. It doesn't have to, but it can have. The trees that are removed, part of the tree removal process, having involvement of a qualified professional, is that a tree that is removed, we're expecting that tree will be replaced with another suitable tree species. All right, so for California climate investments for the disadvantaged and low-income community requirements, this is toward the back of the guidelines. There's Appendix L in the grant guidelines. Grant projects must be in an urban area or urban clusters defined by the U.S. Census Bureau. Grant projects are focused on serving disadvantaged and low-income communities. On our webpage, we've provided some disadvantaged community links, including the U.S. Census urban area criteria. If people really want to know what constitutes an urban area or urban cluster, we use the definition that's provided in the U.S. Census urban area criteria. The AB 1550 DAC low-income maps, CalEnviroScreen 3.0 tool are also here on our grants webpage. Here's how the funding's broken out for low-income, disadvantaged communities, and then what we call open competition. So overall, 75% of the appropriation needs to be expended in AB 1550 communities. These are DAC and low income. And then 25% of the funding can really, we call this open competition. It doesn't need to be in DAC. It doesn't need to be in low income or low income within a half mile. Here's a sample of what the AB 1550 DAC and low income community maps look like in the tool. So you'll see a thematic legend there that describes really pretty much the four criterion: disadvantaged communities, low income, disadvantaged and low income, and then low income communities within a half mile. You'll use these maps to determine really your project location and how you fall into eligibility. All right, we're gonna move over to the Prop 68 Parks and Water Bond project types. The bonds, it's a one-time bond. Again, the total amount for this is $13.5 million. And that's that's an amount for project delivered to the street. The values I'm giving you are what's going to be delivered and not counting the administrative costs. So here's the overview of the three project types. Again, notice the urban forest expansion improvement, that the grant amounts have a higher top end amount, similar to the CCI of 150,000 to 1.5 million. So really what you need to remember is the UFI project types under both funding sources have an upper limit of 1.5 million. And then it's for the same description. There's really nothing different for the urban forest expansion improvement, what's allowed under this. Urban forest management activities. This is for local governments, cities, counties, and districts. It focuses on management plans, tree inventories, and policy ordinance development. Very, very similar to our existing projects that we have. Again, note the grant amount here, it caps at $1 million. And then our urban forest education and research project type. This focuses on education programs, outreach campaigns, or research projects that emphasize urban and community forest benefits. And we haven't offered this project type in, I'd say, several years. So we would expect to get some questions about it. Hopefully the drill down in this presentation will help answer some of those questions and tell a little bit about what the project type is about. For UFI, again, complete listing provided in the grant guidelines. Similar eligible practices and requirements: the tree establishment and care, site preparation, things like concrete cutting, bioswales, or enlarging planting spaces. The same on irrigation systems, job creation, allows parcel purchase, will allow us a minor component to be an orchard or community garden. And then the GHG tracking reporting costs are eligible as well, along with supporting 1 to 2 cycles of post-grant maintenance. Bear with me here. Let me get my slide to advance. There we go. All right. Second project type, urban forest management activities. This is for cities, counties, and other eligible districts to develop or improve a management plan, policy, and ordinance. Includes tree inventory, tree canopy analysis. Education and outreach can be a part of this. Job development, job training, or retaining a qualified professional to guide you in the appropriate management activities are also eligible. And this may have a tree planting component. It's not its primary focus. We're really looking here to assist a city or county that might have a really old management plan or not have a management plan and inventory at all, to primarily focus on standing up such a plan or inventory. So that's its primary focus. Project requirements: you need to be a city, a county, or a qualifying district. An urban forest inventory must be completed as part of management plan development. The reason for this is we really want the entity to take a good look at what they currently have in order to stand up a functional management plan. And we believe it's imperative to have a current inventory in order to have an up-to-date management plan. This needs to retain a qualified professional required through the entire project. Must have a tree canopy cover increase goal stated as a % of tree canopy cover. And then any copies of the grant products must be provided to CAL FIRE at the conclusion of the project. And we would really look at a format that's easy for the grantee to supply to us. So we're not going to ask for some off the chart format that's going to be really difficult to supply to us. The third project type is urban forest education and research. Eligible practices. This can be education program activities, public outreach program activities, research and investigation program activities. It could have a tree planting associated activity as part of it, and a mapping or analysis supporting the eligible practices. With this project type, we really ask the applicants to really read the public resources code that guides us out of the California Urban Forestry Act, and really read thoroughly the grant guidelines for its intent. And also, it would be helpful, a project applicant would read some of the guiding principles for the Prop 68 Parks and Water bond funding and what it's intended for. We thought a little bit about the project requirements and what we'd like to see for individuals with credible experience, and a curriculum vitae or that states a qualified professional we think is the best method to evaluate all these projects during concept proposal stage. So we'd like to see that as early as possible. The sooner you find qualified professionals, and even at the concept proposal stage, that's going to help a project to score higher, especially this type of project, education and research project. Any tree planting that might be part of the project, we're going to ask for a maintenance requirement, at least a 1 to 3 year requirement. And then again, copies of the products will be provided to CAL FIRE at the conclusion of the project. Overall, we're looking for projects that advance urban forestry efforts and are consistent with the provisions of Prop 68 and the California Urban Forestry Act. We have already got some questions about what would make an appropriate research or education project. That's a pretty hard question to really put some solid sidebars on. It really needs to meet the intent of the Urban Forest Act and possibly answer a question or solve an issue with California's urban forests. So we're really asking for project applicants to bring to us what you think are challenges or successes that would be promotable for outreach for California's urban forests. So think about things like invasive pests and disease, our drought cycle, and having resilient forests. So all those things they're on the table, and we can solicit what you might have a concern with and give you our feedback. But when it comes to education research, it really is somewhat of an open-ended subject for improving California's urban forests. Okay, the disadvantaged community and severely disadvantaged community requirements are a little different than the CCI ones. The disadvantaged community, both are established by medium household incomes, and so the disadvantaged community, those are determined by household income with less than 80% of the statewide average. And then the seriously or severely disadvantaged community is a community with a household income less than 60% of the statewide average. Below, we've provided some tools on our grants webpage. There's basically two tools: the Parks Community Fact Finder, and then the Department of Water Resources tools are available. At least 20% of our funding has to be allocated for projects serving severely disadvantaged communities, or what we'll phrase as SDAC communities. And again, on the grant guidelines for Prop 68, it's similar. It's Appendix L towards the back of the grant guidelines. Getting assistance. The guidelines are fairly thorough and they're complex, and so we get it that there's going to be people that are going to have questions. We want to offer some advice here. We're going to be happy to answer questions all the way through up to the submission of concept proposal, but we ask that you read the grant guidelines, try to find the answer in there. And then secondly, what we've noticed is entities that form a strategic partnership or partner with organizations that have experience in urban forest management and urban forest concepts are strengths for your project. Other organizations or people that have experience in grant administration, community organizing, or technical expertise, especially with doing the GHG evaluation and quantification. Those are important people or entities to leverage for putting forth a project that is really going to go not only through concept proposal, but also into project application and then possibly become a successful project. These projects are fairly technical, and we don't expect a single organization or entity to be able to really submit one of these without having a strong partnership to help them out. So this is our advice: is strong partnerships are really the backbone of a successful project, no matter the project type. And then our CAL FIRE website has a whole bunch of tools, more than I'm an expert in, and other urban forestry related websites. And we encourage you to look through those and determine if there's any value there for you. Getting assistance, and then internally for our own program, our program staff are available regionally to answer some questions that might come up. And the staff contacts are in each guideline. They're also on the webpage. You can find their contact information in both sources. Other website resources helpful to applicants. You've seen our webpage throughout this presentation. The Urban Forest Ecosystems Institute is a great webpage for appropriate tree selection or just learning about the different attributes of trees that you might be interested in depending on your project. The U.S. Forest Service has their webpage with research publications and their federal urban programs. iTree Tools and the UFMP Toolkit to help you organize and compose urban forest management plans is another good source. There's only a partial listing, and there's probably a whole bunch more out there that aren't listed here. Where to find all these resources are right here on our Urban Community Forestry page. While I'm on this page, you'll notice right under Urban Community Forestry, there's the link to the Urban Forestry Act. That's a hyperlink that'll take you to the Act. And then if you want to know about our program history and some of its past performance, you can look at CAL FIRE at our FRAP report. They just completed our department's 2017 assessment, and the urban forest section is in chapter 3 of this assessment, and that hyperlink will take you there. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the submission process information. So concept proposal stage, this is fully spelled out in the grant guidelines. So we want concept proposals to be emailed in the fillable format using the forms provided on the web page, and we'll show you that link here coming up. Don't modify the form, please. That gives us grounds for rejecting the form. We deal with that every year. So use the forms for how they're set up, and please follow the required guidelines and stick to the correct funding limits, and please don't modify the form. When you email this to the CAL FIRE Grants Management Unit, please CC yourself in the email as proof that the email actually went through. We haven't had problems with that, but this is advice we give project applicants to do. After review and scoring, each applicant will be notified of the status of their project by CAL FIRE staff. This can happen concurrent with our next step when we invite successful applicants to the project application stage. So stage 2, this is the project application stage. This still remains a competitive process because we invite more projects back that then would be available for funding. Your letter of notification will contain an application tracking ID from the grants management unit, and required documents will be sent to the applicant. The applicant will be asked to submit one electronic and one hard copy to the grants management unit. A summary will be posted of all eligible projects on the CAL FIRE grants webpage. The summary is usually posted upon awarding the final projects. And then all applicants will be notified of final selections as soon as possible. Award timing, similar to last year, we were delayed a little bit on award timing because some of the funding guidelines were being finalized, and we had some last minute changes at the legislative level. So that's why there's a little out there in the paragraph part. Is dependent on fiscal circumstances and the authority to award the funds. So again, please see the grant guidelines for the full description of the application steps. Okay, where to find the concept proposal forms for both Prop 68 and for the CCI. They're right on the grant program's webpage, application forms and information. For now, we put all the forms that are going to be required. Now, some of those forms below, for concept proposal stage, please just focus on submitting your concept proposal form. Don't get hung up on all the other CEQA checklist, governing resolution. Those spacers are there for the documents for successful applicants. So what we want by November 29th is your concept proposal forms only. Successful applicants will then be required to submit the forms that are listed below. Many of you are familiar with that probably, but there's placeholders for that. So again, I stress for the concept proposal stage, focus on getting those forms off our webpage. If you have any problems, you can contact myself or any of the regional staff to get you those forms. And don't worry about the other application or the other required forms for a full project application. It is good though for you to see them and what would be required should you be a successful applicant. We'll talk a little bit about general competitive considerations. These are things that the scoring panel that they're not the single thing that would bring a successful project forward, and they're not a single thing that scores the highest. Again, our grant guidelines contain a complete project scoring matrix within there. So these are some of the ones that we're looking at as being primary, and especially with the UFI projects and even the management plans and education and research. Sequesters significant amounts of GHG. This is perhaps truer for the CCI funded project types than the Prop 68. Co-benefits are well documented, quantified, and described. The benefits can include the following. There's a whole list. That's not a complete list. Technical soundness, disadvantaged community status, or even areas where we haven't had projects. We're looking for underserved areas as well. And then strength of community support and involvement. Does the project have buy-in and support from those individuals that live, work, and reside in the community where this project is going to be? And then for Prop 68, Prop 68 asks the department to consider the services of the California Conservation Corps or another certified community corps as receiving consideration for those project types. Okay, at this time, that was almost 50 minutes, and we will attempt to enter into a question and answer phase for this project. I've personally never done a webinar, so you folks will have to bear with me here, and we hope to get to all of the questions. So stand by just a minute while we get these squared away. All right, I'm going to unmute myself. I can see. All right. Okay, I'm trying to see the bigger window for this question. All right. Oops, let me get back to the top. Is the field really small right there?
Yeah, mine, I can barely see it.
Questions. Can you see the whole question, Julia? So can we put you on? I'm going to mute my computer. Can we put you live, and then I'll swing around?
Yeah.
And we'll use Julia's computer to go through the questions. All right, we're back. There we go. It's not muted. Are you unmuted now?
Oh, okay.
All right. Thanks for being patient with us as we dealt with the infinite echo and feedback. All right, am I on the logs one? Is that the first question? Collecting for logs for biomass?
The first question is it possible to apply for both Prop 68 and CCI investment for the same project?
Okay, so first question, is it possible to apply a single project to be funded under both CCI and Prop 68? So the answer to that is no. We want a grantee to choose either a project to be singly funded under Prop 68 or CCI. The administrative difficulty of split funding, and then also the DAC criteria and disadvantaged community status and the open competition being different, it makes it almost impossible to consider that type, what I would call split funding, to where a grantee would ask for both Prop 68 and CCI funding under one project. So we encourage a grantee, if they have the administrative capability and they really want to, is they can apply for a project under CCI single and a project under Prop 68 single, up to a maximum of 3 projects total. Hopefully that answered their question. What's that?
Yeah, you have to choose.
Yeah. So really, it is for especially for the UFI project type, we're looking for those projects to be under one or the other and not shared as a split funding. While I'm on that subject, everybody here saw the shakeout for the different amount types: 3.5 million for CCI, 13.5 million for Prop 68. A grantee should be ready that if we ask them, let's say they submitted a UFI project under CCI, but it was a really strong project, we could ask the grantee that we think their project might fit under the Prop 68, and especially if it was in an agreeable area, we could ask the grantee to consider having that project funded under Prop 68, or taking a Prop 68 project and possibly having it funded under CCI. Now, the grantee would reserve 100% of the right to say, no, we really want to apply it just for this funding source. So this is a little uncharted territory for us, having 2 different funding sources for this year. So we ask that project applicants be flexible in that manner.
I think it's important to point out that you know, the requirements are a little more stringent for CCI entities due to that DAC requirement, if you will, as it breaks down to the amount of funding we have to spend in those areas. So if there's a question on whether or not you want to work in a DAC or not, you might look at it from that perspective before you decide which type, if you're looking at UFI.
All right. Was that Ian's question that I just answered?
I don't know. I'm
okay.
Trying to keep up with questions coming in.
I think that was, I think that was Anna. That was Anna asking, is it possible to apply for both? Yes. Yeah. So then the next one is Jared from San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Do you, okay, yeah, I'm at the 9:19 a.m. question. Do you consider the city and county of San Francisco as a singular entity? No, they're, so city and counties are different entities.
San Francisco has the unique ability to apply under both, whereas most counties are exclusive to the city. So yeah, you can apply under both, and we've had that in the past from San Francisco.
All right, next one up. I'm not seeing that one. Do you consider, oh, received. Should I do it by, oh, right here. Oh, bottom up.
Yeah.
Okay. What specifically constitutes an urban forest? Oh, why did it move on me? Oh, I see. What specifically constitutes an urban forest? Is that definition located somewhere? Yes, so U.S. Census Bureau, the tools on our webpage, urban area or urban center is defined by the U.S. Census Bureau. Hopefully that will answer your question.
You can, if you're looking at the Prop 68 guidelines, it's on, there's a link on page 5.
There's a link on page in the guidelines,
Well,
probably for each. All right, next one. R45, don't know what that is. Charlotte Kagan, looks like she's left, but we'll go over her question anyways. It might be a benefit to other people. If we're currently administering a CAL FIRE Urban Forestry grant, are we less likely to receive another grant this cycle? Well, that's kind of a trap question, so I'm going to say no. The fact that an entity holds an existing grant does not score them any better or any worse. So we don't, that's not a scoring criteria. The next one from Yvonne. We are a nonprofit organization that develops and facilitates forest health education activities. Is there a way to let other applicants know that our organization is available as collaborators to provide a public education component to their project? I'll take a stab at this. I might pass this one around the table for some input. I would say, first off, think about where you're geographically located. I don't know where you're from. And then, depending on where you're geographically located, I would actually encourage you to reach out to one of our regional urban foresters that are pertinent to your area. Let's say you're down in San Diego. You would want to get a hold of Lynette Short. And I would really start by asking for the common urban forest nonprofits that are currently working and are familiar with CAL FIRE Urban Forest grants and CAL FIRE Urban Forest program. There's also 2 statewide nonprofits, California Relief and California Urban Forest Council. They both have web pages that are actually a great lead into other resources and networks that might be able to help you out. Anything else on that one, you guys?
No, those are probably the best collaborative tools that you could look into in terms of what players are out there that you might, lend your services to. I think Robert hits the nail on the head.
Okay.
Otherwise, you could spend a lot of time reaching out to cities and counties and figuring out who's interested. Yeah,
that's another good point Jimmy brought up. It goes with my asking where you are geographically. Is I would consult with a city or a county. They're from San Diego? Mm-hmm. Oh, so I actually guessed my example right. Mm-hmm. I would actually reach out to the city of San Diego. They actually have an active grant with us, and I'd start from there.
She asked a follow-up question. Is there a grant Facebook group that we can post to?
Is there a grant connected Facebook group that we can post to? And the answer is no. We don't have something set up that way for organization. As a state agency, we're just actually getting a listserv now. So we're a little behind the curve in that, and we don't stand up a Facebook page independently with the department either. All right, I'm gonna move up the. This is from Kanami Otani. When recommending the usage of CCC, are you saying as an in-kind partnership, or are we able to write these costs into the grant proposal? My answer to that is both ways. It could be an in-kind contribution, or it could be an actual cost that the CCC is going to perform some part of the project, and that's the workforce that you intend to use. Hopefully, I answered that okay for you. I'm a little lost on the context, but it can go either way.
But it can only be charged to the project once the project is started. So any calculation that happens as part of the application cannot be correct.
Right. So Julie brings up a good point. Any of the work or costs that are associated with preparing a concept proposal and through the competitive process, we don't allow those to be brought forward into an approved project and billed for. So the billing only starts once there's an approved project.
And to add on to that, just in general, just name dropping CCC within your proposal probably won't help you as much as actually identifying how they're involved. And I say that from the standpoint of other grant elements that we typically look for, where people try to cater to the words as opposed to the description of how those elements are involved.
Yeah. So I'll rephrase what Jimmy said in case some of you didn't quite hear it. I don't know how you're receiving the other staff here at the table, but I'm just listing a project partner without consulting them is not recommended, and you want to contact those people and see what they can offer you support wise on a project before just listing them. Did I catch all that? What you wanted?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm going to move to Jared's. Hey, Jared, great question. If some of you actually have some specific questions you want to follow up with myself or the regional foresters directly, please do. You can find all our email information and phone numbers on Appendix H of the staff contacts. And then what we intend to do with these questions beyond this webinar is to assemble them and post them with some answers. So we are capturing them, Jared. That might help you out. Oh, somebody asked me a GHG question. Could you speak more about estimating the GHG benefits of the project if the exact plan has not been made for each individual tree? Use past plantings or small sample size estimation, for example. I'm gonna take a stab at it first, and then I'm gonna run this around the table because I'll be honest with you, I'm not a GHG pro. At concept proposal phase, what we'd really, especially for the UFEs, what we'd really like to see is the applicant has an idea of closely which species they intend to use. The large tree, medium tree breakdown, an estimate of what aspect the trees might be planted on from buildings, whether they're within 40 feet of a building. Just the general, some of those general estimates. If you know your area, give us a picture of what that parcel density is. For instance, we know that each parcel is less than 1/10 of an acre. We also know the city has grass strips instead of solid sidewalk. and we propose to plant these species of trees. If you can give us a close number or approximation, while you're explaining GHG benefits, be sure you mention what your tree replacement plan might be and what your follow-up maintenance would be for that estimate as well. Jimmy, anything you want to add on that question?
No, I think, like you say, I have a decent estimate, based on what percentage of those parameters you think you're going to touch on in relationship to site specifics and species and so forth. And location, that's probably a good place to start. Most people don't have a full feeling on the per tree basis at this standpoint, and we don't really expect them to. So being honest with your projections is good, because we're looking to expound on that if you get invited back with a project application period. So don't embellish to the point where you have to withdraw on those numbers at the second stage if you get through, I guess would be my encouragement. Be honest too, if you can.
Hopefully you guys heard Jimmy's input. Julie, anything to add on that?
Not really. Pick some examples that you think are representative, and you can always include assumptions or things you just don't know about in the application as well, and explain what those examples or assumptions are based on, so where the numbers are coming from, and what you know and what you don't know.
Yeah, remember, describe your assumptions and how you got to them. Don't just tell us that you're planting 250 Quercus suber, because we might look at that and go, why are they only planting one species? I'm using this as a terrible example, but explain how you came up with those assumptions. And then also remember look through our scoring criteria. That might help you out in estimating the GHG benefits. And remember, UFI, the Urban Forest Expansion Improvement, we really are looking for a GHG benefit. If it's a management plan, a wood utilization plan, or a education and research plan, explain those other assumptions. Your GHG benefit might not be the main deliverable that's the most important. All right, moving up to Anna's question. What would be considered a significant amount of greenhouse gas reductions? Is there an urban forest size that would most likely be able to sequester an appropriate amount for climate change investments funding? I'm going to answer this maybe in a way that I'd be more interested in. I'm more interested in the amount of GHG that can be captured that a grantee can realistically deliver on. So perhaps if you're a small nonprofit and you think that you can only put in 250 trees, and I'm just throwing numbers out, and you give us a grant amount that's not even near the cap of 1.5 million, just because you don't have a large number doesn't mean that your project scores any better or any worse than other projects. Fit the project for what you think you can truly deliver. If you truly think that because you only have a staff of 8 people and you're going to rely on volunteers from throughout the community to plant your 250 trees because that's what you think you can handle and maintain, that's okay. I'm looking for, or our program, we're really looking for a GHG benefit that you have confidence you can deliver yourself and that you can demonstrate that you can deliver for the department.
And I think in that point, whether it's GHGs or cost per tree, we get questions routinely about these magic numbers, and there really isn't one. I mean, yeah, as time goes on, our reviewers get a little more familiar with what an average is for, a certain cost, or maybe GHG sequestration rates and so forth per species. But there's a wide suite of attributes that we're reviewing when we look at these proposals. So don't think that a certain number is necessarily going to exclude you or win you favor if you can estimate other elements of your project.
And I hope that answered your question for you. Next one from Tom. It's about wood biomass utilization. Let's say we set up a drop location for arborists to take felled trees besides the landfill. Do we need to plant a tree for every tree that is dropped off there? Or is that only for trees that are sought out to be felled for whatever purpose that it needs to be felled? What we're looking at in the urban wood biomass utilization is that there is some form of a tree replacement for every tree that's removed. What's tricky about this question is if you get 6 logs, could that constitute 1 tree? Could it constitute 6 trees? So logs and trees are kind of hard to, just because you bring a log in doesn't mean it is a tree. So really what we're looking for in concept proposal stage is that you've identified a need for this wood to go somewhere. You've identified an entity that is removing them, and that you've engaged with that entity that you could perhaps avoid their landfill costs by setting up a drop yard. But through the grant project, you've also had a realistic discussion with whatever entity it is, if it's a city or county that might be removing trees, to find out if they already have a tree replacement program. That might satisfy our need, or if they don't, then how, as the grantee, can you replace a tree for one that is removed? So I'm hoping that I answered that question. Anything else to add on that one?
Yeah, I don't know if he's trying to allude to whether there's going to be monitoring or inspections to validate whether they've done their due diligence with replanting. I don't know if he's trying to get to that with the question of, you know, I wouldn't say that we're gonna be fact checking that years after, but we kind of hope that you're illustrating at some point during your proposal that you do have a plan in place of some sort that we can hang our hat on.
All right, I'm going to move on. Christine's question. If a potential grantee is already implementing an existing CAL FIRE grant, can they apply for CCI funds? The answer is yes. Is there any requirement to be 50% done with the existing grant? The answer is no. I think I've answered your question for you. So I will move on. We seriously ask people that hold existing projects to take a serious look at your own project and ask yourself how you're doing, and be truthful whether you have the capacity to assume another grant. And keep in mind the reporting requirements for receiving these funds. We understand it's work, and that it can take time for a grantee just to do the reporting requirements. So please look at the functionality of your own organization.
And that pertains to, I think, the last box in every proposal form, the past project work section.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have something that you've done, whether it was through a grant from us or some other entity, that's the place you want to illustrate that. And you know, I mean, it doesn't exclude you, but it does give us an idea of, you know, what projects you have going now, and give us an idea if we've worked with you and that kind of thing too. So yeah, you know, divulge that information. It doesn't hurt.
All right. I'm going to move to, I believe this is Rosemary. Oops, I just lost where I was. I got that one. Oh, it just messed up. Here we go. There's a significant amount of funding through the park bond this year. Will there be similar funding amounts released through the park bond over the next 2 to 3 years? Now remember, the bond funding is a one-time funding, so the answer is no, and I don't know if there'll be another bond issued, and we will basically capture that answer and get it back to her. So the bond funding is a one-time; it's not a reoccurring as the climate change investments is. Moving on, Tom Hamilton, when recording data for biomass utilization, do we measure biomass diversion by the number of usable logs or whole trees diverted? You can measure biomass by usable logs, and then also what other byproducts are manufactured. For instance, if you're doing chips or something for biomass, it's basically based on the product diverted. So by whole tree, we do need a quantifiable amount, either in logs, if it's logs that you're making, or what other product you might be making, such as biochar or biofuel. It would probably be tons of chips or cubic yards or some other quantifiable measurement to enter into the carbon calculator. Anything to add on that? I'm not that strong on that process, but it will be by a log size or an amount of chip product are the two typical deliverables for the biomass utilization grant type. Next question. As we expand our urban forests and plant more trees, we definitely need to create at least one new position for tree care, if not two. My understanding is that the grant will fund new hires for maintenance up to 2 years. Will it fund the salary plus benefits? So I'm going to break this down. So all the project types allow for the creation of jobs and benefits, whether they're new positions or whether you're rehiring a position because you now have, let's say, another grant. So yes, you can create new positions. And yes, those positions can be for tree planting. They can be for maintenance. What we're really looking for makes a strong project is that you're hiring a person and they're going to do multiple activities for you through that position. And then, yes, it will fund the salary plus the benefits. And in fact, that's when you get into invoicing, we like to have that broken out as a salary and then the benefits. Anything else to add on that? Either Jimmy or
when she said for up to 2 years. I mean, just to be clear, it's any work that you're doing within the window of the actual project, plus up to 2 maintenance cycles post grant if you propose that and you have a plan that we approve.
Yeah, so
all that work can be covered.
Yeah, jobs that last beyond for the post grant management period are eligible.
That's specific job.
Yeah. It is ASDAC or DAC specific, but it
Right.
doesn't have to be.
Yeah, good point. And remember, it's DAC or SDAC specific. A grantee can propose how they're going to do that maintenance. And one thing in the concept proposal is to have an honest discussion about the personnel that you need to do that maintenance and put forth those costs so that we can understand the context of where your costs are coming from. Yvonne, let's see. Okay, that was from the earlier question. That was from the earlier question. Okay, thank you, Ian. That is kind of why I was paraphrasing other staff. I just wanted to make sure. Yes, we are recording this webinar, Yvonne. And as soon as I learn how to post it to our webpage, it will be posted as soon as possible. That probably won't happen this week. It'll probably happen by the middle or end of next week. Tom Hamilton. If we're accepting trees from small companies, for example, that don't have any replacement plan, and by small companies, I'm going to assume a nursery that don't have a replacement plan. I'll continue on. Is the grantee responsible for replacing all trees that are utilized? We would, for example, have a spreadsheet logging all the trees and logs that we have utilized. We will need to include specific information in our reporting as to how that tree was replaced, and is the grantee inevitably responsible for replacing trees that don't have a replacement policy in place? All right, I think I can answer this one. In fact, it's been a subject that we've internally been talking about. We'd like to see in concept proposal a discussion on if trees die through the grant maintenance period, what the project applicant proposes to do. And you're right, there's not a one size fits all answer for this. There's nothing in the guidelines that say the grantee must replace each and all trees that die. But at the same time, if the grantee says that they're going to plant 500 trees and they expect to sequester this GHG benefit, how's that project beyond project completion date going to deliver that benefit? Overall, it is through best management practices, maintenance, and replacing trees to ensure that those numbers that are put in the model or expected to be delivered actually get delivered.
If you want to add to that.
Yeah, there'll be more on this.
If this question aims to urban wood utilization, we would like the logs to come from an urban environment and that they were removed for a reason. So if you were to get wood from the, or logs from the foothills or a plantation, we would not want to count that towards that project. You can accept them and you can use them, but we would not want to include them in the reporting for our project specifically. So the trees from an urban environment that were removed and used need to be replaced. And at the end of the day, I see it as the grantee's responsibility. So if you accept logs, you are responsible for them to be replaced or replanted. But it doesn't mean you have to do it. You can have partnerships, of course, with entities that say, yes, I'm going to give you my logs and I will replace all those trees or replant them. That's totally acceptable.
And some of that has to do with the idea of logs that could come from what are designated as timber production zones or timberlands, and the rules that our department has in place for how those can be harvested. So we don't want to commingle those lands.
Yes, I'm actually glad that my staff added to this because I think I was taking the question out of context, and I see after rereading it that it looks like it is focused towards the urban wood biomass utilization project type. Okay, I'm gonna move up to Haley's question. And then about not being able to clearly hear the commentators, the other staff in the background. We're collecting all these questions, and we will have answers provided to them and get them posted onto the webpage. So Haley's question, does the job created need to be tree care related? So I'm going to answer this for the context of all project types. Education and research. There could essentially be a job that is for producing a public outreach campaign, and that you're using a media consultant to develop some materials. So That might not necessarily be tree care related. Go ahead, Jimmy, add to this.
Milling or operation of those, specialized equipment, concrete removal, education and outreach, permitting, canvassing. There's a lot of jobs related to getting trees in the ground that aren't tree care specific.
Yeah.
Project related, not necessarily.
Yeah. If you can tie it back to fulfilling some objective of the project and what you need to accomplish that project. Jimmy brought up some great examples of concrete removal. You might have to hire a backhoe service. You might have to hire somebody that can navigate city permitting for you. Tree care maintenance, you might hire somebody who drives a water truck, and your staff goes and works with volunteers to water trees. So it just needs to be related to accomplishing the objectives of the project.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Admin, the cost and time of assembling your invoices, project reporting, the GHG quantification methodology, securing those materials and supplying them to the department. Those are all allowable. Ian, sorry you can't hear any of this. So
we've been talking about you a lot.
And then Jared, that is it. Jared, thank you for the kind words. This is actually my first webinar, so we're just kind of going by the fly. We do hope that going through all these questions might have spurred some other questions. You are more than welcome to, you can send, probably the best thing is you can send them to myself, robert.little@fire.ca.gov, or any of our regional foresters. We will compile the list, and I will make a goal of having the questions posted no less than 10 days before the concept proposals are due, so that everybody has a fair chance to review them. All right. Okay, another one from Tom. Let's go over it. Okay, this is for urban wood biomass utilization. Okay, so if we create a projection for the number of trees that we plan to utilize, should we include funding to ensure that 100% of the trees we utilize are replaced? For example, we might pick up a tree that fell over in a storm and wasn't even felled, or from a small tree care independent contractor that fells a tree for private property that doesn't have a tree replacement policy. Are we responsible to replace trees? I'm going to go, before I really answer that hard and fast, I would really have to, we can answer this offline, but I'm going to want to go to the urban wood biomass utilization project type and really look in the grant guidelines of what the project requirements are, because I want to describe to you the verbiage that's appropriate in the guidelines. So Tom, it's probably best, shoot me an email, and I will look in the guidelines and get you the language that we use.
And also keep in mind, you can accept and use trees outside of this project. Like, you don't have to decline a tree because you're not sure if it's going to be replaced by a new one.
Yeah, if you didn't hear Julia's question, is you can accept a tree, like a tree that got removed.
Yeah.
You can accept a tree that it came from outside the project area, and then what was the rest of it?
I'm not sure if he's worried about meeting his numbers for replacement or whether he's not sure if he can use trees outside of this project that may or may not be replaced. I don't know if this helps, but he can accept trees that are not being replaced as part of urban wood utilization. He just can't necessarily get credit as part of this project.
Okay, we can follow up.
Further.
Yeah, we can follow up with you if you want and really clarify that, what you're asking. All right. Okay. Yeah, why don't you shoot us an email and we'll attempt to get that put on the question list and answered. Overall, I can say this for wood biomass and utilization projects. What helps the project be competitive is if the project applicant has made a plan for tree replacement for trees that have been removed, whether by plan or not. That's not a must, but we do get projects where the wood utilization project, they're not only capturing logs, but they're also planting 100 trees as part of their project. So we can have more discussion on that later with you if you want. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions. Again, I want to thank everyone for their time, and we will get the webinar posted as soon as possible, and we will get the questions posted as soon as possible. All right, everybody. Thank you for your time, and I thank Jimmy and Julia for helping me out and helping everyone get some questions answered. And we look forward to your projects. All right, thank you.
All right.